The massive docking bay doors of Harmony Point Station sealed shut with a deep rumble that Alex Rivera felt in his bones. 3 years of preparation had led to this moment, and now he stood in an alien structure that dwarfed anything humanity had ever built. The diplomatic team behind him consisted of Earth's finest minds, yet they all looked like children taking their first steps into a vast universe that had existed without them for millennia. Ambassador Maria Santos adjusted her ceremonial uniform and whispered to Alex about the gravity being slightly lighter than Earth normal. Dr. Robert Kim clutched his translation device, even though the council had assured them that standard galactic language would be used. Lieutenant David Walsh kept one hand near his ceremonial weapon, a gesture that felt both necessary and utterly pointless in this place. The corridor they walked through stretched for what seemed like kilometers, its walls covered in symbols from dozens of different civilizations. Some looked almost familiar, geometric patterns that human minds could grasp, while others hurt to look at directly. The lighting came from sources Alex couldn't identify, casting no shadows yet illuminating everything perfectly. Their escort, a tall being with blue-tinted skin and 4 arms, had introduced itself as guide prim of the neutral cores. It moved with fluid grace, occasionally glancing back at the humans with what Alex interpreted as curiosity. The guide had explained very little during their journey from the docking bay, speaking only to give directions or point out areas they should avoid. The council chamber. Doors stood 30 meters high and were carved from a single piece of what looked like crystallized starlight. As they approached, Alex felt the weight of history pressing down on him. Humanity was about to join a galactic community that had existed for over 2,000 years. Everything Earth had achieved, all their wars and discoveries and art, had happened in isolation while vast civilizations conducted business among the stars. The doors opened silently, revealing a circular chamber that could have held a small city. 12 distinct seating areas surrounded a central platform, each designed for radically different body types. Some delegates floated in spheres of liquid, others perched on crystalline structures, and a few rested in what appeared to be controlled gravity fields. Elder Thane of the Altarian Republic spoke first, his voice carrying easily across the vast space without any visible amplification. He welcomed humanity to their first formal council session and began reading from what Alex assumed was standard diplomatic protocol. The translation device in Alex's ear rendered Thane's words into crisp English, though something felt slightly off about the cadence. The proceedings moved through various administrative matters with surprising efficiency. Trade agreements were discussed and approved, territorial disputes were mediated, and scientific exchange programs were established between species Alex had never heard of. The council operated with the smooth precision of an organization that had been handling such matters for centuries. It was during the discussion of shipping lanes and protected systems that Alex first noticed the pattern. Every single agreement contained identical clauses about certain restricted areas. The language was formal but unmistakable: complete prohibition of approach, contact, survey, or any form of interference with specific coordinates. Alex's training in military intelligence had taught him to spot patterns that others might miss. As the session continued, he began keeping count. 17 separate agreements, all containing the exact same restriction clauses. The coordinates mentioned repeatedly were familiar: the Sol system and its third planet. When the council moved to new membership protocols, Alex saw his opportunity. The formal welcome to humanity was proceeding normally until he raised his hand to speak. The chamber fell silent with an abruptness that seemed to surprise even the experienced delegates. Honored council members, Alex began, his voice steady despite the magnitude of the moment. I have a question about the territorial restrictions mentioned in your agreements. Every treaty and trade arrangement includes specific prohibitions regarding the Sol system. Why do your laws forbid contact with Earth when you're welcoming us as new members? The silence that followed felt different from the respectful quiet that had preceded it. Alex could sense tension in the way several delegates shifted in their seats or adjusted their postures. Guide Prim's 4 arms moved in what might have been nervousness, and even the floating delegates seemed to bob uncertainly in their spheres. Elder Thane exchanged glances with several other council members before responding. His voice carried a weight that hadn't been there before, as if Alex had inadvertently asked about something far more significant than routine diplomatic restrictions. "Commander Rivera," Thane said carefully, "the restrictions you reference were established long before your species achieved space travel. They are among our most ancient and inviolate laws. These protections were put in place for reasons that predate most of our current civilizations." Ambassador Santos leaned forward, her diplomatic instincts clearly engaged. "With respect, Elder Thane, we appreciate that these laws have historical significance. However, as representatives of the species in question, surely we deserve to understand why our world has been designated as off-limits?" A delegate Alex hadn't seen before, resembling a collection of geometric shapes that somehow conveyed emotion, pulsed with colors that his translation device interpreted as distress. When it spoke, its voice came through as a series of harmonic tones that the device struggled to convert into words. "The archives," it said finally, "contain records that explain the necessity of these restrictions. However, access to such historical data requires special authorization and preparation. The information contained within is ... disturbing to most species." Dr. Kim stepped forward, his scientific curiosity overriding diplomatic caution. "Disturbing in what way? Are you suggesting that Earth poses some kind of threat to galactic peace?" The question seemed to ripple through the chamber like a stone thrown into still water. Several delegates began speaking at once in their native languages, creating a cacophony that the translation devices couldn't handle. Elder Thane raised his hand for silence, but it took several moments for order to be restored. "The restrictions exist," Thane said slowly, "not to protect the galaxy from Earth, but to protect those who might otherwise approach your world without proper understanding. The archives contain records of what happened to species that ignored these prohibitions in the past." Alex felt something cold settle in his stomach. What happened to them? "They disappeared," said another delegate, one whose species Alex hadn't yet identified completely and without trace. "The restrictions were established after multiple incidents over many centuries. Your world has been classified as fundamentally incompatible with non-human contact." The weight of this revelation settled over the human delegation like a physical presence. They had come to join a galactic community, only to discover that the galaxy had been actively avoiding them for reasons nobody seemed willing to explain clearly. Elder Thane seemed to recognize the shock on their faces. "The historical archive keepers maintain detailed records of these incidents. If you truly wish to understand the necessity of these ancient laws, they can provide you with access to the restricted files. However, I must warn you that the information contained within has been known to cause significant psychological distress, even to species far removed from the events described." Alex looked at his team, seeing his own mixture of curiosity and apprehension reflected in their faces. They had come seeking membership in a galactic community, but instead had stumbled onto a mystery that apparently stretched back centuries before humanity had even known that other intelligent life existed. "We need to see those records," Alex said finally. "Whatever the cost, we need to understand why the galaxy has been afraid to contact us." The Great Library of Worlds existed in a space that defied human understanding of architecture. Archivist Prime Nala led Alex and Dr. Kim through corridors that seemed to extend infinitely in directions that shouldn't have been possible. Walls curved upward and somehow became floors, while gravity shifted subtly to accommodate each surface as a walking path. Dr. Kim kept muttering about the impossibility of the engineering, but Alex found himself more disturbed by the contents lining. The walls. Crystalline storage devices contained the collected knowledge of hundreds of civilizations, some long extinct, others thriving among distant stars. The scale of information surrounding them represented millions of years of accumulated wisdom and experience. The restricted archives are kept in the deepest sections, Nala explained as they descended through what appeared to be a spiral pathway that existed in several dimensions simultaneously. Access requires not just authorization but also psychological preparation. The records you seek concern events that fundamentally changed how the galaxy approaches certain types of contact. Nala's species appeared to be made of living light. Contained within a roughly humanoid framework, shifting between colors Alex had no names for. When she spoke, her voice came from everywhere and nowhere. As if the air itself was vibrating with meaning rather than sound, they reached a chamber that felt, somehow, older than the rest of the library, its walls covered with warning symbols. In languages Alex recognized as ancient even by galactic standards. Nala gestured toward a viewing platform surrounded by projection equipment that looked far more advanced than anything humanity had developed. "Before we begin," Nala said, her light form pulsing with what Alex interpreted as concern, "you must understand that these records document the end of galactic expansion. For over 3,000 years, various species had been spreading throughout the galaxy, establishing colonies and claiming new territories. The events recorded here brought that expansion to an immediate halt. The first projection showed a star map of the galaxy as it had existed 800 years ago. Alex could see the territories of dozens of different species, their borders clearly marked and their trade routes connecting vast networks of worlds. Everything looked organized and peaceful, the kind of stable civilization humanity had dreamed of joining. The Harbingers, Nala continued, were the most technologically advanced species the galaxy had ever seen. They possessed faster-than-light travel that made our current methods seem primitive, weapons that could destroy entire star systems, and biological sciences that allowed them to adapt their forces to any environment. New projections showed the Harbinger civilization, sleek ships that moved like living creatures through space, cities that floated in the void between stars, and beings that seemed to shift their physical forms at will. Their expansion across the galaxy had been swift and overwhelming, consuming entire civilizations in mere decades. They conquered through a combination of superior technology and psychological warfare, Nala explained. The Harbingers would study their targets extensively before attacking, learning every weakness and exploiting every fear. No species had ever successfully resisted their conquest methods. Dr. Kim leaned forward, his scientific mind clearly engaged despite the disturbing content. What stopped them? Did they encounter some kind of superior force? The projection changed to show the outer edges of the Sol system, with dozens of massive ships arranged in formation. Alex recognized the coordinates immediately. This was his home system, but from a perspective no human had ever seen. The Harbinger fleet was enormous, easily capable of destroying every trace of life on Earth within hours. The Harbingers had catalogued Earth as a primitive world suitable for resource extraction and slave labor. Nala continued. Their intelligence reports described a species barely beyond metallurgy, with no space travel capability and no apparent awareness of the larger galaxy. It appeared to be an ideal target for easy conquest. The recordings that followed came directly from Harbinger communication systems, translated into standard galactic language. Alex listened with growing unease as the invasion commanders discussed their plans with casual confidence. Survey complete. The Third World harbors approximately 6 billion primitive bipeds, technology level equivalent to our historical period. 7. No orbital defenses detected. No evidence of faster-than-light capability. Resistance expected to be minimal. Fleet deployment authorized. Standard occupation protocol. Pacification estimated at 72 hours maximum. Landing sites selected. Major population centers identified for immediate neutralization. Biological samples to be collected for adaptation studies. The communications continued for several days as the Harbinger fleet moved into position around Earth. Their reconnaissance was thorough, their preparations methodical, and their confidence absolute. Alex found himself thinking about what Earth had been like 800 years ago, medieval societies, just beginning to explore the edges of science and philosophy. Then the tone of the communications began to change. Survey team report. Some inconsistencies in population behavior patterns. Subjects appear to be observing our cloaked reconnaissance vessels with primitive optical devices, investigating possible equipment malfunction. Forward Scouts report. Local inhabitants displaying unusual awareness of fleet presence. Recommend accelerated timeline for initial strikes. Command alert, multiple survey teams have failed to report. Last known positions were in proximity to major population centers, attempting to re-establish contact. The recordings became increasingly frantic over the following hours. Survey teams disappeared without trace. Reconnaissance drones were found dismantled with impossible precision, and ground forces reported feeling observed by unseen watchers, even in areas that appeared completely uninhabited. Dr. Kim gripped the viewing platform as the final communications played. The voice of the Harbinger fleet commander, previously calm and assured, now carried unmistakable terror. All units, prepare for immediate withdrawal. The subjects are not what they appear to be. Repeat, the primitive classification was incorrect. They are aware of our presence and have been since our arrival. Something is fundamentally wrong with this species. Fleet Command, this is Reconnaissance Alpha, the humans. The humans are looking at us. All of us. Every single one of them knows exactly where we are, and they're watching us through instruments that shouldn't be able to detect our ships. How are they tracking cloaked vessels from their surface? Emergency evacuation protocol initiated. All personnel return to fleet immediately. The surface teams are reporting impossible phenomena. The local inhabitants are demonstrating capabilities that don't match any known evolutionary pattern. The final transmission was barely coherent, overlaid with sounds that Alex's human ears interpreted as screaming. They're in our system somehow. The humans are inside our technology and they understand it better than we do. This is impossible. A primitive species can't adapt this quickly. Fleet Command, we need immediate extraction. Something is very wrong with the humans. Then silence. Nalas. Light form dimmed as the projections faded. When rescue fleets arrived at Sol System 3 months later, they found no trace of the Harbinger invasion force. No wreckage, no survivors, no evidence that a fleet of 200 ships had ever been there. What about Earth? Alex asked, though. He suspected he already knew the answer. Unchanged, Nala replied. The inhabitants continued their normal activities with no apparent awareness that an interstellar invasion force had attempted to conquer their world. Primitive optical telescopes continued to function normally. Primitive metallurgy continued to advance at expected rates, and primitive social structures remained intact. Dr. Kim's voice was barely a whisper. Where did the Harbingers go? Unknown. Nala said, the rescue fleets detected trace amounts of exotic matter in the outer system that matched Harbinger technology, but the ships themselves had vanished completely. More disturbing was the discovery that the humans on Earth's surface had somehow acquired detailed knowledge of Harbinger technology and biology, despite having no apparent contact with the invasion force. The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. Alex tried to process what he had learned, but the information seemed to slip away from rational analysis. How could a medieval civilization defeat the most advanced military force the galaxy had ever seen? This was the first incident, Nala continued, but it was not the last. The Harbinger disappearance led to the establishment of the first Sol System restrictions. Other species assumed it was an anomaly, possibly caused by unknown spatial phenomena in that region of space, but there were other incidents? Alex asked. Nala's form pulsed with what he now recognized as the equivalent of a nod. Many others spanning nearly 2,000 years. Every species that approached Earth with any intention other than complete avoidance experienced similar results. The pattern was consistent: approach, investigate, disappear. Alex felt something cold forming in his chest. And the galaxy just accepted this? After the 7th major incident, the Galactic Council established the permanent restrictions you encountered in our current laws, Nala replied. The evidence was overwhelming. Earth was fundamentally incompatible with non-human contact. The humans themselves appeared to be unaware of these incidents, but something about their world made it impossible for other species to successfully establish any form of contact. Dr. Kim looked up from the notes he had been frantically scribbling. You keep saying something about their world? What do you think it was? Nala's form shifted to colors Alex associated with uncertainty. The prevailing theory among our xenobiologists is that humans evolved under conditions that produced capabilities no other known species has developed. The exact nature of these capabilities remains unknown, but their effects on non-human contact are consistent and absolute. Alex stared at the empty projection space where the recordings had played. Everything he thought he knew about humanity's place in the galaxy had been overturned in the span of a few hours. They weren't newcomers seeking acceptance, they were the species every other civilization had learned to fear and avoid. Dr. Tom Bradley had spent his entire career studying cultural patterns across human history, but the research facility on Kepler Station challenged everything he thought he understood about methodology. The archive systems here could cross-reference information across thousands of civilizations simultaneously, finding connections that would take human scholars lifetimes to discover. Alex watched Tom work with the alien interface systems, his excitement growing as each new search revealed another piece of the puzzle. They had been granted unprecedented access to historical records from across the galaxy, and the pattern that emerged was both consistent and deeply troubling. Look at this, Tom said, highlighting a section of text that appeared in the air above their workspace. The Christek Collective, approximately 1,200 years ago. They were an automated civilization, essentially living machines that spread across the galaxy by harvesting raw materials from uninhabited systems. The record showed that the Christek had identified Earth's moon as an ideal source of rare metals needed for their expansion. Their mining operations were entirely automated, requiring no contact with local populations and leaving minimal environmental impact. By their calculations, the harvesting could be completed without the primitive inhabitants of the nearby planet ever being aware of their presence. They sent 37 harvesting vessels, Tom continued, each equipped with advanced AI systems and self-repairing technology. The mission was expected to take 6 months and required no oversight from organic command structures. Alex studied the deployment records, noting the careful planning and advanced technology involved. What happened? The mining fleet disappeared after 3 days, Tom replied. When the Christek sent investigation teams, they found all 37 vessels buried beneath lunoregolith as if they had been there for centuries. The burial patterns were precise and deliberate, but no technology on Earth should have been capable of moving objects of that size. The investigation records were more disturbing than the initial disappearance. The buried vessels were intact but empty, their AI systems showing no record of what had happened to them. More puzzling were the modifications found in their programming. Each vessel's computer contained detailed files about human psychology and behavior that the Christek had never collected. VAs had somehow learned about human social structures, art, philosophy, and emotional patterns, Tom explained. Information that would have required decades of careful study to accumulate. But according to their own records, the vessels had never made contact with any humans. Alex pulled up another file Tom had flagged for review. This one concerned the Void Hunters, a species notorious for enslaving primitive civilizations and selling them to various galactic markets. Their approach to Earth had been methodical and cruel, exactly what Alex would have expected from such a civilization. 600 years ago, Alex read aloud, the Void Hunters identified Earth as containing approximately 4 billion potential slaves. They considered the humans ideal for mining operations on harsh worlds due to their apparent adaptability and resistance to environmental stress. The Void Hunter fleet had been smaller but more sophisticated than the Harbinger invasion force. Rather than attempting direct conquest, they planned to use psychological warfare and advanced biotechnology to pacify the population before beginning large-scale collection operations. Their mothership, the Endless Chain, was designed as a mobile processing facility where captured populations could be broken down and prepared for sale. The ship contained holding cells for millions of beings and biological modification systems that could adapt slaves to work in any environment their buyers Required, the endless chain was found drifting in Earth's outer solar system 2 weeks after the mission began. Tom continued. Completely intact, fully operational but with no crew aboard. Security recordings showed the entire complement of 3,000 Void Hunters abandoning ship in apparent terror. Alex accessed the security files, watching in growing bewilderment. As the recordings showed disciplined warriors fleeing their posts in panic, the audio was difficult to understand through the translation systems, but the emotion was unmistakable. Absolute terror. They kept saying they saw impossible things, Tom translated, working with the linguistic analysis systems. References to humans demonstrating capabilities that violated known physical laws. Several recordings mentioned seeing humans where they should not be and knowing things they could not know. The final security recording showed the Void Hunter commander sealing the bridge and activating emergency broadcast systems. His message was brief and desperate. Do not approach the third world of Sol. The species there is not what it appears to be. They are inside our ship somehow. They understand our technology better than we do. Evacuation complete. Ship abandoned. Alex felt the now familiar chill as he processed this information. But Earth's population at that time would have been medieval, right? No space travel, no advanced technology? That's exactly what makes this so disturbing, Tom replied. Every historical analysis confirms that humans during these periods showed no signs of advanced technological development. Yet somehow they consistently demonstrated capabilities that allowed them to defeat the most sophisticated military forces the galaxy had ever seen. Tom had identified 12 major incidents spanning nearly 2,000 years, each following the same basic pattern. Approach Earth with hostile intent, encounter impossible resistance, disappear or flee in terror. What troubled Alex most was the consistency of the phenomenon across such vast periods of time. Look at this one, Tom said, highlighting another file. The Meridian Alliance 400 years ago? They weren't even hostile, just scientific curiosity. The Meridian Alliance had been known throughout the galaxy for their careful approach to studying primitive civilizations. Their research methods involved maintaining massive distances from observed worlds and using only passive sensor technologies. That could not possibly be detected by pre-spaceflight species. They positioned their research fleet beyond Pluto's orbit. Tom continued, using advanced stealth technology and sensors that could observe Earth without generating any detectable emissions. By their calculations, even an advanced spacefaring civilization shouldn't have been able to detect their presence. The research mission had been planned to last 5 years, with teams studying human social development, technological progression, and cultural evolution. The Alliance scientists were particularly interested in humanity's apparently unique approach to problem-solving and their unusual resistance to environmental challenges. After 1 day of observation, the research teams reported that humans on Earth's surface were looking directly at their ships, Tom read from the files. Not just general skywatching, but precise targeting of their exact positions using primitive optical telescopes. Alex studied the sensor logs, noting the impossible precision of the observations. How could telescopes from 400 years ago detect cloaked ships beyond Pluto's orbit? They couldn't, Tom replied grimly. That's what terrified the research teams. The humans were somehow aware of their exact positions and were tracking their movements despite using technology that should have made detection impossible. The situation had deteriorated rapidly from there. Human observations became more precise and more widespread, as if the entire population had somehow become aware of the alien presence. Telescopes pointed at locations where sensors showed nothing. Should be visible, and observational data suggested that humans were somehow anticipating the research fleet's movements. The final report from the Alliance expedition leader is the most disturbing of all, Tom said, calling up a text file that appeared in the air between them. She describes feeling observed in return and reports that several team members experienced what they described as mental contact with human subjects. Alex read through the report, his unease growing with each paragraph. The Alliance researchers had detected what appeared to be directed thought patterns originating from Earth's surface. as if the humans were not just observing the alien ships but actively studying the aliens themselves. The expedition leader's final entry states that her telepathic team members reported receiving detailed information about Alliance technology, culture, and biology directly from human sources, Tom concluded. Information that the humans could not possibly have acquired through any known means. The pattern was becoming clear to Alex, though he wished it weren't. Across 2 millennia, every species that had approached Earth with any intention other than complete avoidance had encountered the same phenomenon, humans demonstrating impossible capabilities that allowed them to neutralize threats regardless of the technological disparity involved. Tom, Alex said slowly, what do you think is really happening here? Tom's expression was troubled as he looked at the accumulated evidence. I think we've been assuming that humans are the same species. We've always been, but the evidence suggests something much more complex. Every civilization that has approached Earth has discovered that humans possess capabilities that don't match their apparent technological development level. Alex stared at the research display, trying to process the implications. Are you saying that humans have been hiding advanced technology for centuries? No, Tom replied quietly. I think it's something much more fundamental than technology. I think humans evolved capabilities that other species never developed, and we've been unconsciously using those capabilities to defend our world without ever realizing we were doing it. The research station fell silent around them as both men contemplated the evidence. Humanity was not the primitive species seeking to join galactic civilization. They were the species that every other civilization had learned to fear for reasons that even the humans themselves didn't understand. The diplomatic vessel Determination moved through space with the quiet efficiency that characterized human engineering, but the tension aboard the ship was thick enough to cut with a knife. Captain Beth Stone had commanded dozens of missions across human space, but this was her first time escorting aliens toward Earth, and the responsibility felt heavier than anything she had previously experienced. In the observation deck, Alex Rivera stood alongside the 3 council observers who had volunteered for what everyone understood might be a fatal mission. Council observer Kane of the Helix Federation appeared calm, but Alex had learned to recognize the subtle color shifts in his scaled hide that indicated stress. Medical specialist Yara of the Silicon Collective maintained her crystalline composure, though her internal light patterns had become increasingly erratic as they approached. Sol System. Dr. Tom Bradley worked frantically with sensor arrays that had been modified to accommodate alien detection equipment, trying to understand what might happen when they crossed the invisible boundary that had protected Earth for centuries. His research had convinced him that something fundamental about humanity's relationship with their homeworld was about to be tested. Approaching Neptune's orbit, Captain Stone announced through the ship's communication system. All personnel should be aware that we are now entering the region where previous expeditions reported unusual phenomena. Kane's scales shifted to deeper blues as he studied the readouts from his personal scanning equipment. I'm detecting energy patterns that don't match any known stellar phenomena, he reported. The electromagnetic signature from Earth is unlike anything in our galactic databases. Alex watched the displays showing Earth as a distant blue dot, barely visible even with the ship's advanced sensors. It looked peaceful and unremarkable, exactly the kind of world that should pose no threat to advanced spacefaring civilizations. Yet the historical records made it clear that appearance was deceiving in ways nobody fully understood. Yara's crystalline form began to pulse with increasingly rapid light patterns as her species' natural telepathic abilities detected something unexpected in the void around them. There are consciousness patterns here, she announced suddenly, her voice taking on harmonic overtones that indicated extreme agitation. Multiple sources, very distant but somehow focused in our direction. Dr. Bradley looked up from his sensor readings with obvious confusion. That's impossible. We're billions of kilometers from Earth. Even if humans were telepathic, which they aren't, the distance should make any mental contact undetectable. I know what I'm sensing, Yara insisted, her light patterns now strobing with alarm. There. Our minds observing us, and they're not just aware of our presence, they're studying us, learning about us. I can feel them analyzing our thought patterns. Captain Stone's voice came through the communication system with increased urgency. Bridge to observation deck. We're receiving some very unusual readings from our navigation systems, multiple sources of directed energy that shouldn't exist in this region of space. Alex moved to the communication panel, his military training engaged despite not understanding what they were facing. What kind of energy sources, Captain? Unknown type, but they're tracking our movement with impossible precision. It's as if something is painting us with sensor beams from multiple directions simultaneously, but our instruments show no artificial objects in this region of space. Kane's scanning equipment began producing sounds that Alex's translation device struggled to interpret. When the alien finally spoke, his voice carried the kind of stress that transcended species barriers. My sensors are detecting observation platforms that don't appear to exist. The readings indicate sophisticated monitoring equipment focused on our ship, but visual scans show empty space. Alex felt the familiar chill that had accompanied every revelation about Earth's true nature. They were still days away from the inner solar system, yet somehow they were already being observed and analyzed by forces they couldn't detect or understand. Dr. Bradley's hands moved frantically over his modified sensor arrays as he tried to make sense of the readings. I'm picking up electromagnetic patterns that suggest we're being scanned by multiple different technologies simultaneously. Some of these signatures don't match any known scientific principles. Could it be automated defense systems? Alex asked, though he suspected the answer would not be comforting. No, Tom replied grimly. The patterns are too complex and too adaptable. Whatever is observing us is making real-time adjustments to its scanning methods based on our ship's configuration and our crew composition. This isn't automated, it's intelligent analysis. Yara's crystalline form had begun to resonate with harmonics that were clearly causing her distress. The consciousness patterns are becoming stronger, she reported. I'm receiving impressions of vast numbers of minds all focused on understanding us. It's overwhelming. Captain Stone's voice returned through the communication system, now clearly strained. All hands, be advised that we are experiencing some unusual effects. Multiple crew members report feeling observed, and our navigation systems are detecting tracking signatures that don't correspond to any known objects. Alex looked at the three alien observers, noting that each of them was displaying obvious signs of stress, despite coming from species that had volunteered for what they understood was likely a dangerous mission. Whatever was happening to them was affecting beings from radically different evolutionary backgrounds in remarkably similar ways. Kane, Alex said carefully, what are your sensors telling you about the source of these observations? The Helix Federation observers' scales had shifted to colors Alex had never seen before, deep purples and blacks that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. My equipment indicates that we are being studied by observation systems positioned throughout this entire region of space, but the technology involved doesn't match any galactic civilization's capabilities. How widespread are we talking about? Dr. Bradley asked. The entire outer solar system appears to be under active surveillance, Kane replied. Not just monitoring equipment, active analysis systems that are learning about us in real time. The sophistication level suggests technology far in advance of anything the Council species have developed. Yara's harmonic distress patterns were becoming painful to listen to. The mental contact is intensifying, she announced. I'm receiving information about our species' biology, our cultures, our technologies, but I'm not being taught this information. It's being extracted from my mind somehow. Alex felt something cold settle in his stomach. Extracted how? The consciousness patterns I'm detecting aren't just observing us. Yara explained, her voice now carrying multiple harmonic frequencies. They're learning about us by somehow accessing our knowledge directly. Everything we know about our civilizations is being cataloged and analyzed. Dr. Bradley looked up from his sensors with an expression of growing alarm. If that's true, then whatever is observing us now knows everything about Council technology, military capabilities, and strategic planning, all from studying our minds at a distance of billions of kilometers. Captain Stone's voice returned, now clearly struggling to maintain professional composure. Observation deck. We need to make a decision about continuing this mission. Half my crew is reporting psychological effects, and our instruments are detecting scanning activities that suggest we are being analyzed by technology we don't understand. Alex looked at each of his companions, seeing his own mixture of fear and fascination reflected in their faces. They had come to understand why Earth was considered off-limits, and the answer was becoming terrifyingly clear. The humans on Earth's surface, Alex said slowly, they don't have any of this advanced technology we're detecting, do they? Kane's scanner produced a series of tones that Alex's device translated as negative confirmation. Surface scans show typical pre-spaceflight civilization patterns. No advanced manufacturing, no orbital installations. No evidence of the sophisticated systems that are currently analyzing us. Then where is all this observation technology coming from? Tom asked. Yara's crystalline form pulsed with the deep blues associated with profound realization in her species. I don't think it's technology at all, she said quietly. The consciousness. Patterns I'm detecting aren't artificial intelligences or computer systems. They're organic minds, but operating at a scale and sophistication level that shouldn't be possible. Alex stared at the distant blue dot that represented his homeworld, finally beginning to understand why every civilization that had approached it with hostile intent had either disappeared or fled in terror. The humans of Earth weren't using advanced technology to defend their world. They were using capabilities that other species didn't even realize were possible. Captain Stone, Alex said into the communication system, I think we need to return to Council space immediately. We've learned what we came here to understand. As the determination began its turn away from Earth, Alex watched the sensor readings gradually return to normal patterns. Whatever had been observing them was apparently satisfied that they posed no threat and had withdrawn its attention. But the implications of what they had experienced would change everything. About humanity's place in the galactic community, Director Lisa Hayes of the Global Defense Initiative met Alex Rivera in a conference room buried 3 kilometers beneath the Swiss Alps, its walls lined with technology that hummed with barely contained energy. Alex had expected to find primitive human systems, but the equipment surrounding him was clearly far more advanced than anything he had seen even in Council space. Dr. Tom Bradley sat beside Alex, still processing the implications of their journey to the edge of Sol System. The 3 Council observers had returned to their respective governments with reports that would likely change galactic policy for generations to come. But Alex needed to understand the truth about his own species before humanity's relationship. With the galaxy could move forward, Lisa Hayes appeared younger than her 60 years, but her eyes carried the weight of knowledge that Alex was only beginning to appreciate. She had been briefing world leaders on humanity's true nature for over 3 decades, managing information that could reshape civilization's understanding of itself. Commander Rivera, she began, her voice carrying the authority of someone who had spent years dealing with impossible truths. You've discovered that the galaxy has been avoiding Earth for nearly 2,000 years. What you haven't yet understood is why Earth's governments have been aware of this situation for over 8 centuries. Alex felt the familiar disorientation that had accompanied every revelation about humanity's place in the galaxy. You've known about alien civilizations for 800 years? We've known they were watching us, Lisa corrected. Our astronomers have been recording unexplained observations since the 13th century. Telescopes pointing at empty regions of space, instruments detecting objects that shouldn't exist, and mathematical calculations that suggested intelligent observers monitoring our development. Tom leaned forward, his academic curiosity overcoming his shock. How is that possible? Medieval technology couldn't have detected cloaked alien vessels. Lisa activated a holographic display that filled the center of the room with images spanning centuries of human history. Medieval technology couldn't, but medieval humans could? the same capabilities that have been protecting Earth from alien invasion have also been alerting us to alien presence for nearly a millennium. The display showed historical records that Alex had never seen before, astronomical observations from medieval monasteries, navigation logs from Age of Exploration, ships and scientific papers from the early modern period. All documented the same phenomenon, humans consistently detecting and tracking objects in space that should have been impossible to observe. Every major observatory on Earth has recorded instances of telescopes automatically pointing toward regions of space where our instruments detected nothing unusual, Lisa continued. The humans operating those telescopes reported feeling compelled to observe specific coordinates, often with no conscious understanding of why. Alex studied the historical data, noting patterns that stretched across centuries and cultures. You're saying humans have been unconsciously aware of alien surveillance for hundreds of years? More than that, Lisa replied. We've been unconsciously studying the aliens in return. Every species that has approached Earth with the intention of making contact has discovered that humans somehow acquired detailed knowledge of their technology, biology, and culture without any apparent source for that information. The holographic display shifted to show classified reports from government agencies around the world, dating back to the formation of the first organized states. Intelligence services from every major civilization had documented similar phenomena, human scientists and scholars developing insights that seemed to come from nowhere, technological advances that preceded the theoretical knowledge needed to achieve them, and strategic understanding of threats that hadn't yet materialized. The Global Defense Initiative was formed in 1891, Lisa explained, when world governments finally accepted that these phenomena represented a coordinated defense mechanism rather than random paranormal events. We've been studying humanity's protective capabilities ever since. Tom's academic background helped him process the implications more quickly than Alex could. Are you suggesting that humans possess some kind of collective consciousness that activates when Earth is threatened? Not exactly collective consciousness, Lisa corrected. Something more fundamental and more powerful. Humans evolved on a world that required unprecedented adaptability to survive. Our species developed the ability to rapidly evolve behavioral and cognitive responses to environmental challenges. The display showed evolutionary timelines that Alex had never seen in standard education, detailing humanity's development under conditions that had produced capabilities no other known species possessed. Ice ages, volcanic winters, plague outbreaks, and natural disasters had forced human ancestors to develop survival mechanisms that went far beyond what other species considered possible. When alien species approach Earth with hostile intent, Lisa continued, they trigger evolutionary responses that have been dormant in human genetics for thousands of years. The entire population unconsciously recognizes the threat and begins developing countermeasures. Alex tried to process this information, but it seemed to slip away from rational analysis. How is that possible? How can an entire species coordinate defense mechanisms without conscious awareness? The same way birds coordinate flocking behavior or fish coordinate schooling patterns, Lisa replied. Humans develop survival instincts that operate below the level of conscious thought. When Earth faces an existential threat, every human becomes part of a species-wide response system. The holographic display showed brain scan data from humans around the world, collected during the periods when alien vessels had approached Earth. The patterns were consistent across all subjects. Areas of the brain associated with pattern recognition, threat assessment, and rapid learning showed extraordinary activity levels during times when hostile aliens were present in the solar system. The Harbingers discovered this when they attempted invasion 800 years ago, Lisa explained. Within hours of their arrival, every human on Earth began unconsciously developing countermeasures against Harbinger technology and tactics. By the time they attempted to land, our species had essentially evolved beyond their ability to comprehend or control. Tom stared at the brain scan data with the expression of someone watching fundamental assumptions about reality crumble. Are you saying that humans can evolve in real time when threatened, not physical evolution? Lisa clarified. Cognitive and behavioral evolution. When faced with an existential threat, humans instinctively understand whatever they need to understand to neutralize that threat. The process happens unconsciously and spreads throughout the population through mechanisms we still don't fully comprehend. Alex thought about the reports from the various alien expeditions that had approached Earth over the centuries. Is that why the aliens reported humans demonstrating impossible capabilities? Exactly, Lisa confirmed. Each species that approached Earth discovered that humans had somehow developed detailed understanding of their technology, psychology, and weaknesses without any apparent source for that knowledge. From the alien perspective, primitive humans were demonstrating capabilities that violated known evolutionary principles. The display shifted to show recent data from humanity's expansion into space, revealing patterns that explained why Earth-born humans had adapted to space travel and alien contact so much more rapidly than galactic observers had expected. Our unconscious defense mechanisms have been preparing humanity for eventual contact with galactic civilization for centuries, Lisa continued. Every alien expedition that approached Earth provided us with information about galactic technology, culture, and politics, even though the aliens themselves weren't aware they were sharing that information. Alex realized that humanity's rapid adaptation to galactic politics and technology hadn't been luck or exceptional intelligence. It had been the result of centuries of unconscious preparation triggered by alien surveillance. The species that disappeared near Earth, Alex said slowly. What happened to them? Lisa's expression became grim. They encountered humanity's defense mechanisms at full activation. When an entire species of 7 billion humans unconsciously recognizes an existential threat, the collective response is ... overwhelming. But they weren't killed? No, Lisa replied. They were neutralized through methods they couldn't comprehend or counter. Humans didn't destroy the invading fleets. We made it impossible for them to continue threatening us. The exact mechanisms vary depending on the nature of the threat, but the result is always the same. The holographic display showed the current status of Earth's defense capabilities, revealing that humanity's protective mechanisms had never actually deactivated. Every human on Earth remained unconsciously aware of potential threats and continued to develop countermeasures against possible invasion scenarios. Commander Rivera, Lisa said, her voice carrying the weight of knowledge that had been classified for centuries. Humanity doesn't need advanced technology or military superiority to protect Earth. We have something much more powerful, the ability to become whatever we need to become when our survival is threatened. Alex looked at the data surrounding him, finally understanding why the galaxy had learned to leave Earth alone. And the galactic restrictions exist because every civilization that has ever approached us has learned the same lesson, Lisa replied. Humans aren't just another species seeking membership in galactic society. We're the species that every other civilization instinctively recognizes as fundamentally different and potentially dangerous. Tom asked the question that Alex was afraid to voice. What happens now that humanity is making official contact with galactic civilization? Lisa's smile held no warmth. Now the galaxy discovers that the species they've been avoiding for 2,000 years is no longer content to remain isolated. The ancient restrictions exist for good reason, but humanity has evolved beyond the need for those protections. Alex felt the weight of revelation settling over him like a physical presence. Humanity had never been the primitive species seeking to join galactic civilization. They had always been the civilization that others learned to avoid for their own protection. The galaxy is about to learn, Lisa concluded, that the one unbreakable law about Earth being off-limits was never meant to protect humans from aliens. It was meant to protect aliens from discovering what humans really are.